Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and welcome to part 4 of games I wish got fan translated, where pretty much I showcase random ones that I wish got translated into English since they never did originally. And of course they are ones that I do wish that I could play for that they do look pretty good and also do look rather interesting. And last time I just talked about PS1 games, and yeah, there's still more, but of course this time I'm just going to be taking a look at just randoms amount on different systems. But one thing I do feel like I need to get out of the way every time is that whenever I say that this game should get fan translated or that I wish it got fan translated, obviously I don't expect it to happen overnight because obviously these things take a lot of time and patience to do. And to make one quick update, in part 2 I talked about a game called Tokyo Twilight Busters, which is a horror RPG on PC 98, and it was developed by Wolf Team. Well, that game, I heard recently, is actually now in the works of fan translation, and that's really great. I do wish them the best of luck. So with that out of the way, now let's get talking about some games. So the first one I want to mention is Illusion City, which is on multiple systems. I know it's on the Sega CD and the PC 98. And it's an RPG with a cyberpunk setting, which is always awesome. In fact, it looks a lot like Snatcher, which is never a bad thing. But no matter which version you're looking at, I do find that this is graphically a pretty nice looking game, and of course the music is very ambient and interesting. And I have known about this game for quite some time, but just never really got around to actually talking about it. So if you really love cyberpunk stuff, then this is one I think you should look out for. And the next one I'm mentioning is The Witch of Salzburg. So the first thing I have to mention is that I really do love this cover art. I just think it looks really cool. In fact, it kinda reminds me of the album cover of King Crimson called Lizard. So this is an adventure game that is done with both first person and third person, and it all takes place in Austria where the witch trials happened, which by the way is a real thing that did happen in 1675. But of course this video game has to take it to like a whole other level, so pretty much you play as a group of people visiting the area and a bunch of fucked up stuff happens. And interestingly enough, this is one of those games where if any of the characters in your group dies, then they're dead permanently. It's very similar to what David Cage does in some of his games, but only that this came out way before those. So yeah, it's another one of those creepy weird games that I'm actually quite fascinated by. And next up is an SNES one that has a name that is very hard to pronounce. It's called Maten Densetsu Seiritsu no Oparts, or something rather. So I have to say it again, the cover art for this one is pretty badass looking. And this time it's an RPG that has a post-apocalyptic setting. In fact, it has a first-person dungeon crawling, so it's very similar to a Shin Megami Tensei game. And not only just the gameplay, even some of the character designs and monster designs also look very Shin Megami Tensei-esque. And as you know me, I'm a pretty big fan of that series, so it's always interesting to see more games that are kinda similar to it. And next up is a PS2 game called Kowloon Youma Gakuen Key, or something rather. So ironically enough, this is actually an Atlas game, and as you would expect, it is indeed an RPG. It seems to mix quite a lot of different things in here, like so you got like obviously some first person dungeon crawling, you got some dating simulation parts, you even got some parts that kind of play like the original Fallout. I find it to be quite unique, and I really do like the game's style as well. But you want to know what's really crazy that I just found out about a couple minutes ago as I'm recording this, is that apparently this game is getting a remake and it's going to be released on the Nintendo Switch in Japan. So it seems like we have another chance of getting this one to have an official translation. But I figured I'd still mention it within this video because, well, you just never know sometimes, we could get screwed over again. But it does seem like that we do get a lot more of these like crazy weird RPGs that come outside of Japan more often than we did like any other decade. And next is a Sega Saturn game, and that happens to be Merica Shinjitsu no Sekai. So this is another early example of an RPG that takes place in the modern setting. But not only does this game have a really cool early 90s anime style to it, which I'm always a fan of, but it also does have a pretty interesting premise where pretty much you start off as just some regular ass high school girl, but after she meets up with a guy who used to be a part of a terrorist group, it turns out that he was actually running away from his former comrades who are actually pretty fucked up in the head. And of course there's always has to be some like supernatural activity going around, and yeah, it's pretty weird, but it's the kind of weird shit that I like. And I really do like the game's graphics. Everything is just nice, bright, and colorful, and the game's battle system also has like big, huge sprites. And it kind of reminds me of the other Sega Saturn game called Tengai Makio: The Fourth Apocalypse. And next up we got a PC-98 game called Ground Seed. I'm no plant expert, but I'm pretty sure seeds do grow from the ground. I don't see what's so special about the title, but anyways though. So yeah, this is another RPG that has like really huge sprites and backgrounds that are really well detailed and bright and colorful. And I also have to mention that the music in this game is pretty damn fantastic. I can highly recommend listening to the OST of this one. Unfortunately, there's not much I can say else on this one, but yeah, it's a very pretty looking one. So next up, we got one called Moon Cradle, and this one was released for the Sega Saturn and even the 3DO if you could believe it. So first of all, I have to mention that the cover art for this one is just really awesome looking. It looks very heavy metal as fuck. So this is a very weird top-down adventure game where it has a very interesting look to it. It looks almost like 2D, but also with like pre-rendered. It's very interesting. I don't know a good way to explain it, but that's just how it looks like to me. But of course, the weird kicker is that sometimes whenever you activate certain things, it cuts away to live action parts. It's really strange, but I'm kind of interested in it. And of course, I really do like the game's tone, since it kind of has that like dark vibes to it. And next is a PC Engine CD game, and that happens to be Magical, and I assure you that this game is not about a magical lump of coal. So this is a top-down view game, kind of similar to Zelda, but only that you play as some wizard kid. I did manage to play a little bit of this one because I actually did wanted to review it, but unfortunately I got stuck pretty early on in the game because I had no idea what I was doing. But from the few action parts that I played, it did seem pretty fun, and I do like the graphics and the music sound pretty cool from what I remember. In fact, the game's art style does kind of remind me a little bit of Popful Mail. And no, I'm not just saying that because the wizard character looks like the one from Popful Mail named Tat. I really do think that the game does look pretty similar to the PC Engine version of it. So only two more I'm going to mention for this episode, and this next one just happens to be Vantage Master. Now for anyone that has played Trails of Cold Steel 3, you know that they made a new card game in the series with the same name, and well, you'd be right, it's actually related. But only that the original Vantage Master games are not card games, they are actually tactical RPGs. And they were only released on the PC and the PSP. The PSP version is the one that I hope gets fan translated, and apparently there was an English version of one of the versions on PC, but it was an online only game that happened to be in 2002. But anyways though, I do find that this game really does remind me a lot of the game Dark Wizard on Sega CD. And it is a Neon Falcom game, so you know that this game is gonna have some kick-ass music. And just as a fun fact, but in this game, you can actually have like multiple characters from other Falcom games. And even from some of their more obscure games like Brandish, which is always interesting. So as for the final game that I'm mentioning here, it just happens to be Silent Mobius. So this is an action RPG that is actually based after an anime series. Now, believe it or not, I still have yet to see the series, but it's one I've always been meaning to check out. I mean, the setting and the art style is enough for me to go on. But the really interesting thing about this action RPG is that it kinda reminds me of like a Tales of game. But as you know, this game came out at a time before the Tales of series moved from 2D to 3D. And for a game released in 1998, I still think this is actually a pretty nice looking game. But I should also mention that there is another Silent Mobius game on PS1, but that one is more of a visual novel. Not that I hate visual novels or anything, I actually do like quite a few of them, but the thing is though, I'm just more of an RPG guy. So there you have it, that's all the games I'm going to be mentioning for episode 4. So as always, what are some games that you wish got fan translated that I haven't mentioned yet? And yes, you guessed it, there is enough to make a part 5, a part 6, a part 7, and maybe even a part 20, but we'll see. So with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.